please join me in welcoming Hunt, Jane, and Dianne.
Thank you, thank you. Well, just to clear up the mystery, I'm Dianne, this is Jane, and this is Hunt. So now that we're clear about that. You have a very impressive client list, obviously. And by the way, any one of you has the opportunity to be on that list too. Tonight especially would be good. So that is intriguing, but tonight we want to dive into your mind and talk about your creative process. So if you'll indulge us, we're going to ask you some provocative questions.
Great.
So don't hold back.
Can we hear? Yes. Okay.
Okay, so first one, let's start where it started. It seems every artist I've known has kind of said, you know, I knew I was going to be an artist from a real early age. Tell us when you decided that this is what you wanted to do.
Well, I was very blessed. Very early on, my grandfather painted and sent us paintings, and he collected the work of many artists, some of whom moved to New Orleans. My father was a career naval officer and submariner, so I grew up with Polaris missiles and submarine models on the coffee table, so I related to painting and couldn't do anything else. And my brother, on the other hand, could speak 15 languages and dance and sing. He became a writer. This is an interesting picture. I just want to point this out. I did a mural, that's me, believe it or not, in the 70s, and that's Joan Mondale. And I was selected, I was hired under the Cultural Council Foundation Artists Project, which was a recreation of the WPA under Carter. And I was picked to do a 90-foot mural in the World Trade Center, and Joan Mondale was brought to lunch, and they spent more on the lunch than they did on the supplies for my mural, but it was a great experience, and I was asked to restore it after it was bombed the first time.
Wow, that's amazing.
And,
So,
go ahead.
Go ahead. They'd
It's
rather
fine.
hear you speak than me, I promise.
But I just wanted you to know that that really is me.
You know what? You were handsome then, and you are handsome now.
Oh, you're too
And
kind.
quite a snappy dresser.
Thank you.
So notice his tie. It has finches on it. It's a print of one of his famous finch
paintings.
paintings. So that also can be yours.
Not really, but if you call Maidwood Plantation in Louisiana, we have a few ties in the gift shop there.
So I wanted to ask you, obviously you were nurtured in your artistic career, but I
I
am
think tortured is
well,
more the word.
tortured, but you know, you decide which it is. But I want to ask you, if you could speak to your younger self, what advice would you give yourself as a young artist?
Just do what I did. Persist through, you just have this dream as a child. You have no idea how you're going to realize it. You don't know what a career is or how to do business, which I'm still trying to master. And I don't regret anything. And I had no idea. I just kept going and going and going. And I moved to New York very early on when I was like 20. And so I've seen New York since the 70s. And I really saw a lot of the best of it, which I'm very grateful for. It was like living through a historical moment in time.
Weren't you involved with Andy Warhol somehow, or part of his staff, or can you
My
speak
brother
to that
worked for him, and he was going to do, my cousin wrote the book Slaves of New York, which Merchant and Ivory wound up making into a movie, and Bernadette Peters played my cousin, and a lot of my paintings are in the movie. But he died, and so he didn't do it. But my brother wrote for Interview magazine, and his book ends, Monique Van Voren and Sylvia Miles are two of my best friends for the last 40 years. I know most of the people of that.
I think it's great. If you look around, you'll see these diamond dust pieces,
well, that's
which
a real
are
connection. I first
right with
used
Andy
it.
Warhol. Yeah.
I helped do a shadow painting with Rupert Smith, who did all of his work.
Yeah, they're just
That
so
was when
beautiful.
I first learned about it.
Yeah, they're great. So one of the great things about knowing Hunt is that, and if any of you have followed him in the publications in Architectural Digest and Elle Decor and on and on and on, New York Times, whatever, is he has a 30,000 square foot studio in Brooklyn, New York that is...
Well, that's not it.
That's part of it, yeah, that's part of it,
The
yeah.
harp.
So filled with his fabulous antique collection, and so talk a little bit about what all is going on in that studio every day.
Oh, it's bedlam. I mean, I have about 60 parrots which shriek at the top of their lungs if provoked, and I'm painting through all of that, and doorbells are ringing, and deliveries, and stretching and priming, and I'm painting through the whole thing, and people visit a lot. And this is actually minimal for me. When I got this studio, it was not ready. They were tearing down my 6th studio in New York City, which I miss desperately. I still live there. When Bloomberg signed Hudson Yards years ago, they bought my building for $450 million, and we were given some money and had to be up by July. And I found this by chance. It was like really hard to find a big space. There aren't that many left, frankly. And it was kind of remote, but I used the money to fix it up. It wasn't ready, and it wasn't ready, and I was really ready to jump out the window. I shouldn't say that. But anyway, I acquired the Armory in Scranton, Pennsylvania, and I moved 500 trucks of my antiques and collections to the Armory, which I still have. It's a whole city block, and I redid it, and that's what the new book's about. It's called Gatekeeper, A World of Folly, and the essay is called From Arms to Art. And Gesa von Habsburg wrote the foreword, who's a friend and is the world's authority on Fabergé. So this is very pared down for me. My previous lofts, which you'll see in some of the other books, are just mobbed with stuff. This is my Jardinier collection. Anyway, since that time I've acquired 3 or 4 more houses, the Charles Sumner Woolworth's house, Belterre upstate, which is about 40,000 square feet, Maidwood Plantation, and so I'm cluttering those houses instead of the studio because I'm tired of getting paint on all of my newly upholstered furniture. This is the Quartz Mansion, upstate New York. It's right on the Hudson. Oh, that's the Armory. This is some of the houses that I own.
So, Hunt, how would you describe your design aesthetic? Or is it indescribable?
Completely intuitive. I've been probably documented more than a lot of designers. Nobody's ever asked me to do their house. So I guess personal would be a good description. I feel like I'm a time traveler. I create, I go through the veil into other periods. We have to have Ghostbusters come in periodically. Seriously, I'm not kidding. I can tell you stories forever. Like the Woolworth's house, we couldn't get anything done for 4 years. We had to redo things sometimes 3 times. And I had Angelique DeWolf, my Ghostbuster, come in, and she discovered that the house had been completely gridded for Mr. Woolworth, who created Woolworth's in Scranton, Pennsylvania, and it opened on my birthday in 1875 or 9 or something. So she opened the grid so that it could become mine as well. And after that, things flowed better. But the first night I spent there, the bed collapsed and the table next to it lifted 4 feet in the air, turned upside down, and came crashing to the floor. That was it wasn't really scary, but it was unsettling. But nothing, that was the worst of what's happened. And I talked to my metaphysician in Santa Fe, and he said my brother was mad at me that I hadn't thanked him enough for helping finish the house. Anyway, nothing like that has ever happened since, and it's great.
So when did you figure out that the date of the being built was your birth date. I mean, that had to be kind of.
Well, I read it in print, and my birthday's July 18th.
I know, but I mean, but did it? I mean, that had
was
to
weird.
sort of
And I came to
think that this is
Scranton-
meant to be. Yeah.
Well, the minute I drove in, before I saw the armory, I went, oh my God, what is that house? And we went and peeked in the windows, and it was very derelict. It had been abandoned for 18 years, and now it's just phenomenal.
One of the reasons we got him
I
here.
can tell you what these things are. This is a dining room at Lakeside Plantation in Point Coupee Parish, Louisiana, and this house was given by Thomas Jefferson to the Marquis de Lafayette at the time of the Louisiana Purchase, built in 1830.
I was just going to say one of the carrots we dangled in front of him to get him here was that he'd been antiquing ever since
Yes.
he arrived. So
No, and I love Indianapolis. I have wonderful friends here, and last trip I found some great things. We have
yeah, you
this
did. We have some things that are in the
baldachin hanging over this Persian furniture that belonged to the Chavarand's wife, and I found it at one of the antique places here.
Yeah.
Well, and we love you back,
Thank you.
don't we? We do, we do. So through your artistic success, you've been able to launch fabric and wall covering collections for Lee Joffa. How does that process work? Do you create designs for that purpose, or do they lift them from your already
They
done paintings?
interpret what I do, but
Okay.
I have a long and short history of collaboration. The first was with Tiffany that thrilled me to no end. I always wanted to have my name on a Tiffany project, and we did tabletop, and it sold out 5 times, and that was the end of it. Then I worked with Echo, who got Ralph Lauren started. I don't have any big goals in that area, but I love seeing my stuff interpreted. My most exciting thing right now is that I have a new wallpaper group coming out with Lee Joffa, and one of them is a repeated Abraham Lincoln motif, and the other is the Queen. There's a magazine this month that has a whole
I saw
page,
that.
and we're scared to death because they're not issuing it in England, because if the Queen doesn't like it, she'll drop Lee Joffa. One of my psychics said she'd seen it, and she was kind of ho-hum about it or something. But I'm excited about it.
I can't imagine that she wouldn't love it.
Well, maybe
All
she
she'd have to
does.
do is meet you, and it'd be
Right.
all over for her. She'll knight
Well,
you.
somebody gave my book to Prince Charles for his 70th birthday. So
That's great. You know, the one thing I've seen from selling your art through the years is, and people say this over and over again, when they come into your house and they see your work, that it just brings them great joy. And you know, you just look around and you look at your paintings and they smile, they make you happy, they make you feel good. And in the world we live in today, I think people appreciate that even more. But we were also thinking about how for tonight, since it's just about the hospital and children and healing, how do you feel like this connection between art and healing?
I think it's the most important for me personally. I mean, I get such a thrill when my work goes to a hospital or I just did a 28-foot sculpture in Louisiana. I've done about 9 now. But this is for a butterfly park, which is going to be a very wonderful place. Somebody just gave $1 million for the butterfly pavilion, but they're starting out with this giant metal sculpture of mine, and that's really exciting. I'm branching into new media, and I love anything that has a purpose that's public or healing, or
Yeah.
I just think that's the gift of it all. Nothing else really matters more.
We agree, and I think that's why this has been such a wonderful
But
tie-in
somebody
tonight.
told me the other day, who deals with really major people, that I have no idea the collections that I'm in, because they never tell you. So that might be exciting to find out someday.
Well, wherever it is in the world, it's making people happy. And
Good. Well, and there's a lot of depth to the work which some people miss, but my premise is completely metaphysical, and they speak to people
They
very
do.
often. It's not just all fun and games by any stretch of the imagination. It looks easy and light sometimes, but it really has a world behind it.
no, we know that. We know that.
Well, we have a pretty exciting announcement to make tonight. There is a major butterfly painting in the gallery, which please take the time to visit. But a very generous donor is going to purchase that painting and donate it to Riley Children's Hospital, and it will hang in the cancer wing. Can I say who it is? Marlene, thank you. Please stand up. No? Thank you.
The other, Indianapolis has been a great inner wealth of, my personal gratitude in that I was able to do the children's playscape wing, and that was one of my most favorite things to be part of, with 2 million children coming to the wing and drawing from some of the paintings and whatnot. And I was totally formed as a child by a little museum near my grandparents' house, and I used to just spend hours there, and it was like an old Victorian house, and it had all these wonderful butterfly collections and things I can't even remember. But, it really impacts children's lives. Some children, those that are hungry for more. We live in an age of such hideous violence, and we're being taken over by these little devices. Younger people don't even speak half the time. It's all done by... Anyway, by the way, I am on Instagram. I don't see it, but you're welcome to.
And how many followers do you have?
Well, we're just short of 100,000.
Woo!
So please join. I was really not into it, but that's just something to look at. It's not violent.
That's right. No.
It's all like this.
Well, we want to thank everybody for coming tonight, and you can wander around and see everything. There's going to be food at Ferguson's. There's more going on over there. There's going to be music, and we just want to remind everybody again that if you see any of Hunt's pieces and you purchase them tonight, it will go help to benefit Riley Hospital. So thank you all for coming. Does anybody have any questions for
take a
Hunt?
few questions
He
if
said he'd answer
anybody
some questions.
Has one. Yes. Oh, that was one of your questions.
Yeah, I forgot to ask that question.
From
Thanks.
nature.
Thanks, Emmy.
The question was, where do you draw inspiration?
Nature and spirit. I'm just totally mesmerized by nature and all of the intricate forms and birds and butterflies and plant life. I lived in Hawaii for a few years as a child, and I was an exchange student in Nicaragua, and I kind of sum my whole experience up as exotica, which is basically the unknown. But it's like, the reason I'm doing what I do is because all of this is disappearing from our planet, and people don't look closely enough at what we have left of nature, in my opinion. And fashion and art and everything has been influenced, and you can see it very specifically. Like if you go to Tibet, the robes are completely like the pheasants of Tibet. And I'm like, and it just completely formed the aesthetic of nations and whole cultures, and was very revered until now. In Hawaii, they had the king's cloaks that took 300 years to make, and they would capture the mamo bird and take 2 tail feathers out. That's it. They would release them unharmed. They're extinct now, but it's not because of the king's cloak. It's because of the cutting down of their natural breeding grounds and that sort of thing. And the Mayan king's headdresses were the quetzal bird. There's a book called Bird of Life, Bird of Death, about the plight of the quetzal. And natives will go out and, shoot them with a slingshot and eat them for dinner, and they don't know that they may be the last one on the planet. But in the old days, you were punished by death if you killed a quetzal. Anyway, not enough is known about this, and that's my mission as well, is to make everybody get excited about nature and try to protect it while we have a chance.
I've got one question, and I bet it's on the minds of everybody in this crowd. I know the answer to it, but they don't. Why bunnies?
Well, I am the sign of the rabbit. That's one reason, but I didn't know that until I've been painting them for years. I just started, when I moved to New York, I was really struggling with subject matter. And in the late 70s, early 80s, I started painting saints, mostly with New World connections like San Martin de Porres, Rose of Lima, Niño of Atocha. And I always put animals around them. Some of them were part of what was supposed to be around them, and then I would put like a family of bunnies, and I was referring to seeing millions of butterflies drinking water by little streams in Nicaragua. And I eventually started leaving the figure out, and I wanted to talk about, nature being the purest of spirit. And even the cage has a meaning. It's the harnessing of the senses, and the butterfly is, transformation, metamorphosis. The rabbits have other meanings too, luck. I don't know whether any of you remember, but in the 50s, everybody had the rabbit test to find out if they were pregnant. So a rabbit died for most of us that are in this room. And that's not true anymore. But I've noticed that the rabbit is appearing in films like crazy. If any of you saw The Favorite about Queen Anne, she had a pet bunny for every miscarriage, which was 13. And she lived with them, and they were all over the film and may get an Academy Award. I just saw another film, I can't remember what it was, where there were millions of rabbits as well. So rabbits are trying to talk to us, we have to get over the animal testing, quit killing them for makeup. And fortunately, we don't need them to find out if people are pregnant anymore. But nobody even remembers that.
Oh, I remember it.
You do, yeah.
Well, now you know.
We got to have another question here.
So what I love about your design aesthetic is how collected it is, and how you have so many layers of antiques, which I think is a hugeness in the design world. A lot of people got away from antiques and they don't value the history. So of all your collections, I know in Brooklyn you have a collection of colored glass, you have a lot of chairs. What's your favorite thing in antiques to collect?
All of it. It's like people say, what's your favorite painting? And I always think it's the one I'm doing in that moment. I go through phases. I'm not collecting Blanco glass the way I used to because it's so collected now. I usually start out ahead of the curve. I collect top hats, and I show them in museums with my Lincoln paintings. I have closets and closets of top hats. They're so fascinating. I love old Paris porcelain. I love American late 19th century gilded furniture. I just get really excited, and I did as a child. My parents used to take us to these things that seemed like warehouses full of the biggest antiques I could imagine, and it just stuck in my head. They're not interested, but it stuck in my head. And I love saving things, bringing them into the next century. I love using gilded frames and repairing them, and we're going to lose all this stuff. Things that were once common, like the passenger pigeon. The last one died in the Cincinnati Zoo in 19 whatever, the skies used to turn black when they migrated. There would be 5-mile wide expanses of these birds flying. They just killed them, like, you know, for fun and whatever. There's none left. There's not a single living one. So anyway, I like to honor the past rather than destroy it. And I have people that can recarve things. It's so exciting to save things and put a contemporary fabric on it. I think it's coming back. I mean, I see it. I didn't used to see it in magazines. Everything was beige. Now even museums are painting walls colors, which I've been doing since the beginning of time. So I do think that it's catching on more. I think it's not as valuable as it used to be, but that's better for me, you know.
Well, Hunt's going to stick around this evening, so if anybody else wants to talk to him, he'll be here. Thank you again, everyone, for coming.
Thank you so much.